Hey, it's Vicky, and today I am here to share my reading wrap-up for the month of October. I went into it with a lot of expectations, high expectations. I really wanted to read like spooky stuff, like a lot of people with Halloween and everything. And unfortunately, it started off a little rough, a little disappointing. But luckily, it did gradually get better. So I read 10 things total. I did 5 print books, 1 ebook, and 4 audiobooks. So let's dive in. So I started out the month by reading a book that I wanted to revisit because I read it as a kid, and Netflix was making a series about it. And that is The Midnight Club by Christopher Pike. And this is a very good example of a book that was totally, in my opinion, mismarketed. The synopsis on the back says it's about a group of teenagers who are in a hospice home. And, so that means they are dying from one disease or another. And a group of them get together at midnight every night and tell each other, like, stories, creepy stories, whatever. And then the synopsis says, and they make a pact to, when one of them, the first person in the group that dies, is supposed to somehow give the rest of the group a sign that, they're there or whatever. Some sign of like the afterlife or something. And then one of them does die. And so you get this to me, I had the impression, and I didn't remember this when I read it as a kid, but reading the synopsis, you get an impression that one of them's gonna die and spooky stuff's gonna start happening because it's that person is trying to make contact or something, right? Wrong. This book wasn't that at all. This book, I don't think, is a horror novel at all. It's totally mismarketed. It is about a group of kids that are in a hospice because they are dying. But that whole rest of it, to me, didn't even really exist. So for that reason, I was disappointed. I think that bothered me the most was that I was expecting something and got something totally different. And sometimes that works. Sometimes I like it. This time I didn't. I also felt like there was a lot of storytelling in this book, where they're taking turns telling stories, and those stories are part of the book. And there's one character in particular whose stories I found incredibly boring. And so for that reason, a lot of the book was kind of boring. And then something else I noticed, the chapters, especially the chapters where they are meeting as a group and telling these stories, were incredibly long. I want to say chapter 2, I didn't mark it, but I want to say chapter 2 was 50 pages long, which in a 200-page book is just too long. So overall, this one was kind of a disappointment. I gave it 3 stars because it did explore themes of facing your own mortality and knowing, being young and knowing that you're gonna die. Those sorts of things I thought were explored well in here, and so I liked that, but the rest of it I was pretty disappointed by. So yeah, I gave this 3 stars, and I should also note that I started watching the Netflix series and I made it about halfway through and gave up because I was bored. So all in all, The Midnight Club disappointed me. Next up, I read Heartstopper Volume 3 by Alice Oseman, and this one I really enjoyed. This was also just a great volume in this series. This one follows Nick and Charlie as they are on a class trip together. And I really liked this one. It was cute, just like all the other ones. It's cute, and there's also some, more serious topics. I liked the themes of coming out and how those were explored. There was also another theme introduced in this one that I think is going to be more prominent in Volume 4 that I'm looking forward to. So yeah, I have Volume 4 from the library. I'm going to be reading it very soon. But yeah, I enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So I did have one DNF in October. I tried to read Wicked Girls by Stephanie Hemphill, and I made it. I took the bookmark out. I want to say I made it maybe halfway through this, and It's told in verse, and so I really thought that it was going to go quickly. It's basically about the Salem witch trials. And so I thought it was going to be more fast-paced because of the subject matter and because it's told in verse, and it was so incredibly slow, and I was so incredibly bored. And I also kept getting all of the main characters mixed up. And so it was also kind of frustrating. So yeah, I DNF'd this. I'm going to be donating this book. The next 2 books that I read in October were, one was good, one was not. And I actually vlogged about them, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I read Gilded by Marissa Meyer, which is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling that I enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars. And then the other book I read in this vlog, which was basically a vlog where I wanted to read fall books that I meant to read last fall. The other one that I read was Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw, and this one was not good. I did not enjoy it. I gave it 2 stars. So it was kind of an interesting vlog because one of the books I enjoyed, one of them I didn't. But yeah, if you want more of my thoughts on those 2 books, go check out that vlog. Next up, I read Stephen King's new release, Fairy Tale, and this one is a fantasy novel, and I definitely will say that this is a fantasy novel, not horror or in any way. This is fantasy. It's about a kid named Charlie who befriends this elderly man in his neighborhood who also has a dog. So that whole dynamic, first of all, I really enjoyed because I'm a dog person, so I loved the dog aspect in this story. But he befriends this old man, and basically, as things progress, he finds out that this old man knows how or has the ability to get access to this fairy tale world. And Charlie learns how to do this. I'm trying not to spoil things. And goes to this fairy tale sort of magical land. And so I really enjoyed this because, like I said, it's the type of fantasy I can get behind because obviously Stephen King is building a world here, and he's introducing a lot of, fantastical elements, but it's not overwhelming. Sometimes I get overwhelmed with fantasy because it is so immersive sometimes, and you really just get thrown into things and you just have to take it all in, and I struggle with that sometimes. In this one, it's all because our main character stumbles upon or, enters this other world and it is new to him as well. You are kind of learning along with him. So it just makes it, I don't know, to me it makes it more accessible, easier to process. And I just love that trope anyway about a normal person ending up in these like magical, fantastical sort of world, sort of like an Alice in Wonderland sort of situation, a Narnia situation. That's kind of what happens here. And so I like that trope. I thought it was done well. There was a part in the middle that was kind of slow and I was a little bored by, but otherwise I enjoyed this. I thought that it had good world building. I loved the characters. I loved Charlie. I loved the dog. And the old man too. And just sort of some of the people he meets along the way. It had great characters, which I always feel like is one of Stephen King's strong points. He does write really good characters, and this is no exception. Yeah, this was enjoyable. I listened to it on audio. I don't think I wrote down, yes, the narrator, I did write down the narrator, Seth Numerick, I don't know how to say that. Anyways, he was a good narrator. So if you are, intimidated maybe by the size of this, because it is a 600-page book, I say check out the audiobook because I thought it was good. And I gave 4 stars to. Then I read a horror anthology called Black Magic Women, and this was edited by Sumiko Salson, and this is basically a collection of short stories that are horror, all by Black women. And so I really enjoy horror short stories, and so I was definitely looking forward to this. And overall, this did not disappoint. There were, I don't know if I wrote down how many stories there were. I think there was 18. It was either 16 or 18. And all of them got at least 3 stars or higher from me, which is rare. A lot of times when I read short story collections, there's always a couple that are like 1 or 2 stars that are just trash, but I really liked all of these. But my favorites that I probably top 3, and these were all 5 stars. I don't know if I wrote them down. I did. Okay, they were called Here Kitty. Let me see who that was by. Here Kitty by L.H. Moore was really fun. Alternative by Tabitha Thompson. And then my favorite was Labor Pains by Kenya Moss Dime. And they all just were like unique, but also felt like the type of horror novel, like horror short fiction that you've seen before, but like they were done in a different way. So yeah, I thought they were great. They were definitely like at parts like, oh, kind of creepy. And overall, this was an enjoyable collection. So if you're looking for like short horror fiction, definitely pick this up. I think overall this got 4 stars from me because I always like average out all of my, like I rate every short story and then do an average rating. And I believe this averaged out to like a 3.8 or something. So I rounded it up to 4 stars. So yeah, if you're interested in short horror fiction, check this out. Okay, then I read another like sort of anticipated book for me because I've been really wanting to try this author out and have seen her books everywhere. Like, and she has a ton of them. So I really wanted to try out Darcy Coates, and I read The Haunting of Gillespie House. And this was about a girl named, oh gosh, I can't remember what her name was. Elle, there we go, who is kind of like house sitting for this couple. They're going away on some trip or something, and she's staying there for a month, just like watching over the house. She's there by herself and basically starts to have like creepy experiences during her stay. And then it becomes this whole sort of horror mystery surrounding the house and why it's haunted and such. And I enjoyed this. I thought it was a fun read. There weren't any parts that really particularly creeped me out like I was hoping. I was really hoping that this was going to just scare the crap out of me. But it really didn't quite get there. But it was still a good read. I think the mystery was good, was fun, I enjoyed. But it wasn't like amazing like I was hoping. But I definitely want to read more Darcy Coates. And interestingly enough, at the end of this book, there were 3 short stories that she wrote that she kind of included at the end here. And I actually enjoyed those a lot more. They were called Lights Out, what was the other one? Lights Out, Crawl Space, which to me was like perfect horror. That was like a 5 star. And then the other one was called Bed and Breakfast, which also was like a 4.5, 5 star read. So I actually enjoyed the short stuff at the end more than the actual Gillespie House story. So I definitely think that she has the ability to write some really great creepy stuff. Maybe just this one just wasn't quite it, but like I said, the short horror at the end was awesome. So I definitely want to give her another try. But if I'm just rating The Haunting of Gillespie House, it was a 3 star. The stuff at the end, like I said, 2 of them were 5 stars and the one was maybe like a 4. So yeah, highly enjoyed. Was sort of underwhelming, but I definitely still want to give her another try. Then I read 2 books for a weekend reading vlog. So the first one I completed during that weekend and I already reviewed, but it was my favorite read of October. And that was The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. The only thing I'll say, because like I said, you can get my deep thoughts in that vlog video, but as you can kind of see, I was experiencing some disappointing reads in October. Like a lot of the stuff that I thought was going to be just like 4 or 5 stars ended up being like 3 stars, or I ended up DNFing, or they were 2 stars, or just, you know, it was just kind of the horror that I wanted to experience in October just wasn't happening until I read The Hellbound Heart. And that just totally hit the spot. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It was my favorite read of October. So yeah, go ahead and check out that vlog for my full thoughts on The Hellbound Heart because I don't want to repeat myself. But then I also started during that weekend vlog The Way to Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson, and this is a Carrie retelling. Stephen King's Carrie. I think we all know the story about the girl who gets picked on and has her revenge at the prom. And this one is a retelling in the sense that it's basically the same story. I don't think Tiffany D. Jackson deviated too much from the actual just plot of Carrie. But what she did here was she changed some of the characters and added a whole layer because it deals with a girl named Maddie who is biracial. And at the beginning of the book, when you meet her, she has been passing as white for many years. Her classmates and everyone around her in the community and everything assumed that she was white because her father was white, her mom was never in the picture. And then it comes out that she's actually biracial. Her mother was black. And so she starts to get picked on for that. And so it kind of brings in, so there's that part. And then also, what kind of changed is it deals with this is a smaller community in the South where they have segregated proms, which apparently is still a thing going on today, and I didn't realize that. Where you have the black students go to black prom, the white students go to white prom. And there's schools that still do that. That's absolutely crazy to me. But in this book, this school is like that until they decide, let's try to integrate the prom and bring everyone together. And so it deals, this book, having that main Carrie sort of feel, you know, because Maddie is like Carrie in that she's bullied, she's different. She also has the telekinesis that Carrie had, but it also has this added layer of racism. You know, it's commenting on racism specifically in like a school setting, and also feeling like, because Maddie feels like she doesn't belong either way, being biracial. She's never really embraced the black side of her because her father was just forcing her to be white. And so she's kind of like learning all these things about that part of her culture. And then you also have other characters in the book black characters who also struggle with you know, feeling like they don't belong because of their race. And so it was a horror novel because, you know, you had all that stuff like you found in Carrie, but then there was also that layer of social commentary. And so I thought that was just great. It was very well done. I listened to this on audio, and I have never gotten through an audiobook so fast. I didn't want to put this down because it was just so fast paced. And even though you had a lot of different point of views, and there was also like a podcast element to it, there's sections where there's a podcast or news reports talking about what happens at the end of the book, and they're kind of talking about it, and you're learning, going back in the past and learning what brought that big horrible event on. So there was just a lot going on to like keep you interested and to keep you like wanting to listen and find out more. And like I said, I read Carrie years ago, and it's one of my least favorite Stephen King books. I didn't really enjoy it that much. I gave it 2 stars. This one though, I really, really enjoyed. I'm actually like, I think I initially gave it 4 stars, but I might even up my rating to a 5, honestly, because of the overall experience, I think. I just think that Tiffany D. Jackson took what I think was a weak kind of meh story and just brought so much more to it, made the characters more layered, and there's more depth to them, and just to the story itself. She just added so much, and to me fixed all the problems that I think Carrie had. And so, and like I said, I couldn't put this down. Like, I wanted to know what was going to happen, even though like I already knew what was going to happen because I've read Carrie, so I know how it was all going to end. But I was still wanting to get there, you know? And so, yeah, I think I've given this a 4, but I might up it to a 5. I really enjoyed it. So I would say if this interests you at all, you should definitely check it out, because it does have some, you know, has horror elements, some supernatural type stuff, lots of social commentary. And it was all just like put together so well, and I highly recommend the audiobook. There are like multiple narrators because, like I said, almost every POV had a different person narrating. But to me, that just really brought the story to life and just made it really entertaining. So yeah, if you are at all interested in this, even if you didn't like Carrie, give this one a shot. You might like this one better. And then I finished out the month by reading a mystery because I've been reading like supernatural, spooky, weird stuff like all month, and so it was really refreshing to read a book that was more of a just sort of detective mystery. And this one also fulfilled the Buzzword Reading Challenge for me for October, and that was Bluebird by Ada Clark. So the Buzzword Reading Challenge was to read a book with like an animal or creature in the title. So there you go. And this one this one centers around a Texas Ranger named Darren Matthews. Yeah, Matthews. Who is a Black Texas Ranger, and he kind of gets word about these two seemingly unrelated murder cases in this really small town in Texas. And he kind of comes in because they just think that it's sort of odd that these two bodies have kind of shown up relatively around the same time, like within a few days of each other, though they seem completely unrelated, because the one victim was a Black man from Chicago like area, and then the other victim was a young woman like from town, and so they had seemingly nothing to do with each other, but they're like, it's just weird that we've had these two deaths in a short amount of time in this little tiny town. So he kind of goes there to check it out, and it sort of just unravels. It's a mystery novel, you know. He goes there to investigate, and yeah, you kind of start to solve the mystery. And I really liked this one because, first of all, it got me a little interested in the Texas Rangers in general, because I know nothing about them. I never realized how revered they are in that part of the country, and how they are sort of, on this like other level to your typical law enforcement, and how our main character is part of this, you know, this unique but also very highly respected group, but also has his own struggles with it because he's a Black man. And so a lot of people, even though he is in this very prestigious job role, they don't treat him the same way because he's Black. So this obviously deals with, it's a murder mystery, and it deals with, you know, race and things, because again, the two victims, one was Black, one was white, and you're seeing the differences in the ways that those deaths are approached and treated by not only law enforcement but the community. But also you are also getting the perspective of a detective who himself is Black and faces certain, you know, certain aspects of like racism and stuff in his career and in his life. And it was just really interesting to kind of have that extra layer added on to a basically to like a detective mystery. And I really liked the main character, Darren. He was a complex character, a flawed character, like good at what he does, but he also has some, you know, some aspects of his personality and stuff that, and some sort of, and also some like baggage that just make him very relatable. And so I also was left at the end like wanting to pick up the second book. There's a second book in this series. I think the series is called the Highway 59 series. But the way this one ends, it kind of makes you go like, I need to read the next book, because there's a little bit of like a cliffhanger of sorts. And so yeah, I really liked though, like if you just like detective, like procedural sort of mysteries, murder mysteries, yeah, definitely check this one out. It was good. The mystery was good, and the way that all of the sort of clues and details were sort of revealed throughout the story were really good. It kept me hanging on. I wanted to find out what was happening. I was totally along for the ride. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. All right, that is it, guys. That is everything that I read in October. It started out a little rough. I was really feeling like I just wasn't gonna have a good reading month. I had like a DNF, and all the books that I thought were gonna be great were not. But then I read some surprising stuff, like, and gave high ratings to things that I wasn't expecting to. I read fantasy books, like what? So overall, I think it ended up being a good month. So yeah, let me know down below what you read in October. What was your favorite read? Did you read anything spooky? I would love to know that. And yeah, that's it. I hope you guys had a wonderful Halloween if you celebrate it. And I hope that October treated you well. And I will chat with you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.